Thank you very much.
So
with that, I will welcome everybody to our board budget subcommittee meeting. This is our meeting to discuss the agenda for June 15th, 2022. We are joined by two of our finance directors and our associate superintendent, as well as our trustees, Trustee Prasad and Trustee Zhang. And what we do at the beginning of the meeting is ask to make sure that anybody who is here is signing in, that is part of the participating group for the meeting. So in the chat, go ahead and please just put your name and note that you're present. This is to make sure that we're in compliance with all of the rules and regulations. And then before we start, we will ask Director Pasquale and Director Arcala and myself, has anybody received public comment in advance of the meeting in writing? I have not received any public comment at this time.
I have not received anything also.
Okay. And with that, I will ask, is there any public comment logged on to the meeting that would like to give public comment before we start? Okay. Seeing none, I will turn the meeting over to Trustee Zhang and Trustee Prasad to lead us through, and we will be going through the agenda to look at finance-related agenda items. Trustees?
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to June 13th subcommittee meeting. And let's look at the agenda. So try to see which is the first one. 10.1, approved student trip, study trip, which is not actually, which does not have impact on the finance, right? Mr. James?
That's correct. And those finances are generally covered by the school site themselves.
Okay, so let's see. 10.2, which is not adoption. And let's look at the 10.3, approve the license renew for the Neopod Premium Plus software for grades K to 12, which the dollar amount is $122,000.
Yes, this is a program that's been very popular with our teachers. I think it gained a lot of popularity in the pandemic, but it was used in some places even prior to the pandemic. It is an increase from the prior cost of $90,000, and it will come in for grades K through 12 at $122,000, paid for out of the Extended Learning Opportunity Grant dollars.
Okay. I noticed that this one last year cost $90,000, and this year is $122,000. I think this is the only program which has like 35% increase. So just my observation.
Yes, and the general price points for software programs like this are set by the company and standard for districts across the state of California and in most times the nation.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on the contractual agreement, it can be based on the number of total licenses purchased, or sometimes there's a fee that's based strictly on the ADA for a district. And it is likely that their costs have gone up year over year, given the total economy of things.
Right. Okay. Okay. So if that's the only provider for this kind of program, and we have to go with it. And the next few items are similar. Shall we go by one item by one, or shall we just lump sum them together?
Well, I can give a brief summary. You are correct, Trustee Zhang. Seesaw Learning Management, Brain Pop, Screencastify, Ed Puzzle, all of those are software programs used at the classroom level. And 10.8 is an Apex program, which is a program we utilize for our credit recovery and summer school programs. So we're purchasing additional programs there. And 10.9, the last one in this section, is document tracking services. It's an online service that most districts use for tracking their LCAPs, their SARCs, their site plans, their single plans for student achievement. And it's a pretty much a standard operating procedure for school districts.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Kamick, for the summary. I don't have any questions for this. So,
We can move on.
okay, so shall we move forward to the next one? Let's look at 11.1, approve the payroll warranty, which is also routine, right? Any comment from Superintendent?
No, this is a pretty normal scope and amount for our payroll.
All right, now let's look at the next one. It's 11.2. Approve purchase orders, which is 85,736,000, etc. Can someone give us a summary of this one?
Sure. This one is not a normal amount. It's much higher. Part of the reason is because we have 2 months of PO reports coming forward, April and May, which in and of itself would make the amount higher. Of note, though, is in April, in our Fund 21, which is our building fund, our construction fund, you would expect to see some heavy expenditures with the amount of Measure E projects we have. And within April, we had $64.8 million of purchase orders related to Fund 21. So those are the two reasons that this amount is so high in this agenda.
Okay, thank you. Now let's look at 11.3. Authorize staff to amend the agreement with Fremont Millwork Corporation for the modernization project at Rick's Grangler Early Learning Center for $30,000.
Yes, so for Rick's, it will house some of our preschool programs for Fremont Unified, as well as some of our state preschool programs. The state preschool programs identified a need for some cabinetry, and the cost estimated for the purchase and install to meet the requirements of the program is just over $30,000 to have Fremont Millwork do that work for us at Rick's Grangler Early Learning Center.
Thank you. I do have one question for this attachment, which is the CTC Rick's Grangler General Construction. The last column, it's I think balance. Let's look at balance. I think it's I cannot open it up. Let me see. Basically, I would expect that the balance, available balance, should be close to zero because we are come to the completion of the project. But I still see like $7 million there. I just think that maybe there are some errors in this statement or this spreadsheet.
So when I look at that, Trustee Zhang, I'm looking at the amount that you're referring to, the totals being $7.5 million in the available balance to finish. And I don't know that that total is reflecting what's available in total. I think it's just reflecting the total amount. Perhaps I could be mistaken, but I read the contingency total to be just over $700,000 left to finish. The part that is being demonstrated, that most of that is the $6 million for permanent construction, and it could be that there are a few $1,000,000 there that have not yet been paid out. The total budget was $4.5 million. The total committed was $6.05 million, and so I believe what you're seeing in the end is just a summary of what is there, less the contingency that hasn't been spent. I don't know if James or Bruce are able to add additional information there.
Not at this time. I'll take a deeper dive and take a look at that a little bit more. Still working on getting understanding of the facilities budget.
So we can provide that to the trustees in the
Yeah,
Q&A.
I'll take a deeper look at that.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Let's see. What else? 11.4, authorize staff to enter into agreement with Canon Solution American for a lease assumption for a duplication center copier. That's $32,000.
So we have a
30
duplication center at our district office, and we need a copier for that. And so we are doing a lease agreement for that. The lease is for 17 months, and we'll make a decision at that point if we want to try and purchase the copier at the fair market value or terminate the lease. Of note, we have reduced our duplication center program from last year to this year.
Right. So I ask you that we try to get out of this agreement. Is that right? Because we could purchase this copier. No, I
We
mean the
could
service.
purchase, we could make the decision to purchase the copier. I think the reason that we're looking at a lease
Mhm.
is because we have talked previously about continued reductions in this program. And so if we don't need the program long term, I don't think we want to invest in this high capacity copier long term.
Got it. It makes sense.
And do we have an idea of what the purchase price of one of these is?
$75,000 is our approximate value right now, or not value, but approximate cost.
And this 32,000, this covers maintenance and any repairs or whatever that happens, right, during this period.
Yes, I'd have to double check the agreement, but that's generally the case with their lease agreements for copiers.
Yeah, and copiers are usually very bad in terms of requiring maintenance. So those things add up as well. Okay, we can.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's look at 11.5. Authorize staff to enter into agreement with Lifeline Safety Training for first aid training services.
So this is a group that we've used since 2015. And as you're seeing a trend in our agenda for June, which is pretty common for May and June agendas, we're bringing forward a lot of the contracts that we use annually. So this group helps train our staff that need CPR training as part of the requirements for their job.
Got it. And then this one, the $75,000 covers the training through June 30, 2025. So it's
Correct.
like 3 years. Is that
Correct.
3 years? Yes. Okay, that's good. Okay. Now let's look at 11.6. Authorize staff to amend the agreement with Canon and Associates for risk management services for the cap of $100,000.
That's correct. So Canon and Associates supports our risk management department. And the way that the contract is written is dependent on how many claims are received. And we believe that we need to be adjusting the agreement to reflect not to exceed $100,000 in any fiscal year.
Okay.
And I have had a request from a trustee for the amount of a prior agreement, and we will provide that in the Q&A. I don't have that in front of me today.
Okay. So this one is for the purpose of put a number into our budget. Just for that purpose, right? So that we can allocate a certain number, the amount of dollars into our budget. So for the planning of next year. Is that the reason?
Well, we would put this into our budget at that amount, but this also sets forward our ability to utilize these services up to a certain amount. If we needed to use them more than $100,000, we would need to come back with a modified agreement for services above and beyond that.
Okay.
And if we didn't spend $100,000, then that would fall down into the reserves at the end of the year, would likely be swept back.
Got it. Okay. Let's look at 11.7, authorize staff to renew the agreement with Demographer School Works, and which is an annual service we have utilized, right, every year.
So this is for a 3-year agreement for demographic services for the district. Schoolworks is the company that we use this year to provide us updated demographic information. Based on the feedback, I believe the board was relatively pleased with their work. And so we are bringing forward an agreement to have them continue to support us with demographer studies.
But this price is an annual price, but we sign up for up to 3 years, right? I mean, $27,000 is for 1 year service. Yes. I think it's for 1 year.
This would be the
service.
cost for the renewal of the agreement for 1 additional year for the school year 22-23.
Right. Okay, thank you. Let's move to 11.8, approve the renewal of, what is this, TIP web license for the 2022 and 23 school year.
Yes, TipWeb is a software solution that we have used since 2010. It assists with our site orders of textbooks and other core materials. And so we want to continue using this product.
Okay. All right. So let's move to 11.9. Approve the contract amendment with Sodexo? How do you pronounce that word?
That is correct, Sodexo.
Sodexo America. For the amended amount of $164,699.
Correct. So this is an amendment to the contract. It goes from March through the end of August. We obviously this year saw a significant uptick in the number of meals that we served because of the free meal program funded by the federal government. So with that, we saw with that significant increase in meals served, we need to add more money to the contract for our services. This will also extend our services through the summer program, and we'll be bringing a separate child nutrition services agenda item to the board at the next meeting. As trustees recall, we went out for an RFP for services for next year. So this will get us through the summer, and it covers the increased meal counts back through March.
So my question is, why the number we start to going back, start in March? Why can't we do a little bit sooner? Is that because we don't have the estimated the meal account?
That's when we ran out. That's when we hit the previous contract amount. So that's when we hit the estimated amount that we had to go all the way through August. So we exceeded that amount, so we did not have the ability to pay the vendor anymore with the per meal price. So this is just increasing the number of projected meals to the end of the year to be able to continue to pay the vendor at the contract amount.
Okay.
So we exceeded our previous. The good news is because of the increased meals, we've exceeded our expectations.
Okay. So we had a good estimate of this coming summer. We're going to provide meals to all students who want to get the free food, or we're only going to provide the food to students who are using the summer program?
So I believe we are only providing students to the summer program, with the exception of Cabrillo, which is a summer seamless site, which you can serve the community. And just a note, there's a gap in the universal meal program between July and the beginning of the school year. So the state will not be covering or the federal government the cost between July and August of having a universal meal program at a summer school site. We're hoping that the feds were actually going to cover the gap, but at this point that gap is uncovered.
I see.
But it's not going to be a universal program for anybody to come on the site. They will be, all sites will be a closed site program with the exception of the summer seamless program.
Okay, thank you.
So even though, are we exposed with some additional funding from our side? Because during that gap period, July to August, we are not reducing any services, are we?
No, we will not be reducing services. Right? We will continue to operate as we normally would during the summer of serving students. We're just basically not charging them.
And it may also be that the state provides some backfill for us. We'll have to wait and see what the final adopted budget at the state level looks like, because the federal government has not renewed the free meal program, but the state has proposed that they will pick up the free meal program for all students next year.
Yeah, but in the meantime, whatever cost is, we are budgeting for ourselves to pay for it. If we get reimbursed, that's great. Right?
Correct.
And what is that amount?
And the costs have to legally be covered out of the general fund, right? You can't use your federal funds to pay for it, even if you have excess federal funds. We have I believe we've estimated what that cost is. Is that is it already in the budget, James?
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that amount is 164,699. Okay, let's move to 11.10. Authorized staff to amend the agreement with Ningyu and more for the new construction and the modernization project for Thornton Middle School for the, let's see, for the amount of 376, which is what's that? It's just a change order.
No, this is an amendment. This
Mm-hmm.
is due to the Department of State Architecture requiring some geotechnical services during our construction. And so that's what this is set to amend, is to provide that scope of the project increase at $65,376.
Okay. All right. So let's see. Let's move to 11.11. Authorize staff to amend the agreement with Cordoba Corporation for the modernization project at Rick's Grangler Early Learning Center. And this one is for the amount of $10,000, 493. What is this about? Oh, this is not budgeted.
This is for Cordoba to do the move management services for the remaining scope of the project. The installation of all new furnishings is completed, and the installation of the site-based supplies will be ongoing through July of 2022. And so Cordoba, in this instance, will work with the Grangler staff to move all the teaching tools and supplies over to the new location in July. And that is the move management scope of this project. And that is why it is $10,493.21.
Okay. So after this one, and then the project would be completed?
We're hoping that we're close to completed. We have some things that are budgeted that have come forward to the board. The work hasn't happened yet, so that wouldn't necessarily require it to come back to the board. But we are moving forward with the plan of moving everything over in July and having our students start there in the end of August. Or let me rephrase that, 2/3 of the way through August. Because
Okay.
we come back to school earlier than the end of August now.
That's true. Okay, let's move to let's see. Let's move to 12. Consent calendar, human resource, and the collective bargaining. 12.1. Is this one approved certificated personnel action? Is this one? No, this one not related to budget.
No, 12.1 and 12.2 are our normal personnel actions for classified and certificated staff. And while there's cost associated with all of our employees, they're
Mhm.
not particularly budget items in and of themselves.
Right. Yes. Yes. So 12.3 personnel commission budget for the 2020-23 school year. And this one, does it have a number? I think I remember this one has increased, right?
This budget is for
The
$831,582.
oh,
That's the proposed budget for next year.
Oh.
To give context, the adopted budget in 21-22 was $777,132. The
Mhm.
estimated actuals are a bit less than that at $738,000. The significant bulk of costs here, for those who may be watching, the Personnel Commission is a merit-based system, which many school districts participate in. It is for our classified services, including management positions all the way up to senior, everything except for senior management. And the significant bulk of the costs here is for the staff that work in the HR department. So there is a percentage that goes to the administrator salary, the personnel commission stipends, the clerical salaries, the technician, overtime, substitute, and extra clerical. That is just under $550,000. The bulk of it being $434,000 that goes to clerical salaries, and then you have nearly another $200,000 associated with the employee costs related to the PERS, Medicare, unemployment, workers' comp, and OPEB. And then you have other expenses related to the operational supplies, the non-capitalized equipment, advertising expenses for our postings, testing for drug testing, TB testing, and that starts to round out the rest of the budget itself.
Mm.
So I had one question on this. I mean, we have 6.5 FTEs, and then the bottom table there, 5801. Is this the services that we use for postings and or to find us candidates and such, or what is that amount? Consultants and contracted services.
I'll have to ask James to pull a little more data on that. Perhaps we can put that in the Q&A.
Okay.
It looks like it's something we used a lot less of. It could be, for example, when we used a search firm last year to recruit for our associate superintendent, assistant superintendent. Those may be the costs that are associated with that. That's my educated guess, but I'd have to pull the information to check. And that's why they adjusted the budget this year, I'm guessing downward from the 61,000 to the 23,000.
Yeah, I'll Trustee Prasad, I'll go back to HR and get some more information. In regards to what CJ was discussing, it was part of our marketing for finding staff was actually under advertising expense. That's why you see an increase there from $7,500 to $16,000. We did increase that budget for advertising because we did see that it's a lot harder to find staff for just staff in general these days. So we had to beef up our advertising costs for 22-23. But I'll dig into consultants and contracts and get back to you.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So let's see which one. Next one is 12.4, approval provisional intern permit recommendation.
This was
This one
possible.
has no this one has no finance impact.
Nope.
Okay. So now let's look at 12.5, settlement between FUSD and CSEA for 473,625. And this is for, can you elaborate on that, Superintendent?
Sure. This is our PEMCA agreement. And as we've talked about in budget presentations and in board meetings, the Public Employees Medical and Hospital Care Act requires a minimum contribution from the district. There was an error in how that was being handled by the district, and so we are negotiating agreements with our representative groups for how to resolve that. This reflects our agreement with CSEA. In the previous meeting, we brought forward an agreement with our Managers Association, FSMA, and pending this approval, it will provide the retro payments for up to 4 years for those impacted members. And then we would still need to reach agreement with CSEA, with SEIU and FUTA on the same topic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember the other ones, right. Thank you for that. So do you know that we are in a negotiation with the other two organizations, and we just have not reached agreement yet?
That's correct. We are actively discussing it with SEIU and FUTA, and we have not reached agreement with those groups just yet.
Okay, thank you. So now let's look at the LCAP public hearing. That's not related to financing.
It is related to financing in the sense that we have to be looking at our unduplicated percentage and our dollars that are committed to our students. We are not at 51% where we reach the concentration grant level, but the LCAP does incorporate a significant amount of funding that we have a plan outlined for how to do our best to meet the needs of our unduplicated students within that LCAP.
Okay, so here's the question. So we're going to use all the LCAP funding for the unduplicated students, or is that like we can also use for the students not in this category?
Well, I believe it was the intention of the concentration dollars and the unduplicated percentage dollars to be allocated specific to the students who generate that additional funding.
Mm-hmm.
However, when Governor Brown implemented the LCFF formula, they did permit dollars to be used more broadly than it may have been historically, in which we might consider a categorical fund.
Mm-hmm.
But what we are looking at here is what are we doing above and beyond what we do for all students to support our unduplicated students. And I think Fremont Unified in particular has held very well to the commitment of utilizing these funds to support our unduplicated students, as I believe that was the true intention of these funds. So I think we do an exemplary job of that in Fremont Unified.
Okay, great. So sometimes I think, let's say if we having a license which can apply to the whole school district, and then we can open this program to other students. Basically, is the whole purpose, the main purpose is to serve unduplicate students. But if the program or somehow is not restricted, and then we can share with other students if they have a need to use this program.
Yes, I mean, ideally, these funds principally serve the student groups that generate the funds, but
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't, for example, if there was something that was good for all students and available at a school site for all students, it doesn't mean that all students couldn't utilize those services. But the design of the use of these funds is to primarily support the specific student populations that generate these funds, which would be
Mm-hmm.
our low-income students, English learners, and our foster youth and homeless students. And that's about 27% of our students in Fremont Unified.
Right. Yes. So I think that's a very comprehensive plan, and I think those students needs every support, for this funding for us to decrease the performance gap. Okay, now let's look at this one is a big one. 15.2. Hold a public hearing on the 2020 to 23 proposed budget. So shall we get a summary of this one?
Well, I will give a quick summary. I mean, yes, this agenda item could be the whole meeting in and of itself. We just had the Superintendent's Budget Task Force, which took an hour on this topic alone.
Yeah.
What I think is important to note about this is this reports our estimated actuals, and it reports our projections moving forward in a multi-year projection for 3 years. But what I think is critical to note here is we are projecting what is in law at the given moment in time. And so the governor's proposal, for example, includes ADA flexibility and changes to the LCFF formula above and beyond the COLA. And those are not in legislation yet. They're not approved by the governor. They're not fully finalized and agreed to by everybody at the state level. So we can't include those. We will present our budget based on what's passed into law in the moment. Then we will come back with a 45-day revise, which is pretty common, once the state passes their budget, which will likely happen in between Wednesday and our second board meeting in June. And so we'll do a 45-day revise when we come back in August and present to the board and the community the updated budget, which will reflect those changes. And then it's also worth noting that as the 45-day revise would reflect increased revenues based on the state adopted budget, we would also be looking at the potential of increased expenditures once we reach a final agreement with our associations for compensation increases.
For compensation increases, is that what you mean, the salary or?
Yes, our salary negotiations that are happening with all of our groups currently.
Okay. So yeah, I was
Bruce?
actually initially I was thinking I would see an increased general fund, but they are pretty much in line with last year's. That's mostly because we have a reduced enrollment of 1%.
Yes, it reflects the fact that we've been in declining enrollment, and without the governor's ADA flexibility passed into law, we have to show the enrollment as it is in the moment under the current laws of the state. And that's why our revenue would increase once the state budget is actually passed.
Okay, so right now we're using the real number we're not using the 3-year average?
We're not, because that's not official at the state level. We do think it's very likely that it will pass, but in order for the county to certify our budget, we would have to, if we put that in the budget, we'd have to immediately take it out and set it aside. We can't put something into our budget and send it to the county that's not officially passed into legislation at the state level, because each year the state adopts their budget, it becomes part of the legislation. So ideally, the state would adopt their budget in May, and school districts could adopt their budget in June, knowing the whole picture. But that doesn't happen. It used to be that the state would adopt their budget in July or August some years, but now they usually adopt it by June 15th because they stand to lose salary if they don't have their budget passed at the state level by then.
Yes, I see. Interim Associate Superintendent Colby has his hand raised.
I think you're on mute.
Just want to point out a couple of new things this year. As you know, based on the triggers of the economy and reserves, and the 10% reserve cap is being enabled for next year. So you see two items on there, which is two resolutions for a commitment of funds. So in order to keep our reserve below the 10%, we are committing part of our fund balance to specific purposes. One being the PEMCA, that we've set aside the money for current and future PEMCA settlements, and that we are setting aside the money for the current year 2021-22 offers that are on the table in collective bargaining, showing them as commitments that we are holding fund balance aside for there. And that the reason we're doing that is that doesn't count towards the 10% reserve cap.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was going to ask that question. So, our offer on the table is factored in, and that those funds are committed. Okay.
I do want to clarify, though, Trustee Prasad, our offer on the table is factored in and committed for the current year only, because our two out-year aspects of our current proposal are dependent on the budget passing as the governor proposed it.
Mm-hmm.
So the amount that we have set aside is the current year only.
Yeah, makes
And
sense.
that's why
we just needed
yeah.
to commit enough to get below the reserve cap, and then we have more time to make decisions on the next step.
Okay, thank you. So let's see, which one are we? Let's see. Okay, I lose track. Is that 15.4 approve agreement with Seneca Service to continue the Waters Middle School counseling enriched class for the next school year?
Yeah, so Seneca is a non-public school, oftentimes where we might be sending students who are FUSD students to a non-public school outside of the district. And in this case, we have a partnership with Seneca where they come to our school, and we have a program where they operate their class on our school site. And this is generally a positive agreement for our students specifically, because they are able to garner the benefit of a more intense level of support while staying on our homeschool campus, which is ultimately what we always want to do. So this is something we've done the prior 2 years, and we'd like to continue for next year.
Yes, absolutely. So is that for the students who cannot find a service with Seneca, then we send them to refer them to the private school, which is NIP?
The students who would be in this classroom already qualify for this program based on their current IEP. And so if students weren't able to find the appropriate level of success within the Seneca program that we have at Walters, we would then be looking for a more restrictive placement, and the IEP team would make a decision about what is the next best placement and service for that student.
Then we would go to other private schools, right? That's it.
It might be other non-public schools that might have a
Non-public
more
school.
restrictive setting.
Mhm.
Or Seneca as well, right? I mean, we use Seneca for as a NPA or NPS.
Yes, we do use Seneca for other programs for other
Right.
students.
Right.
For
Right.
example, you might have a younger student who's in a Seneca program that's not cooperated with us on one of our campuses.
Yeah, I mean, I see this as a good program where Seneca is coming on site and providing services without removing the student from campus, and it can only serve as whatever a set of students, and any overflow will go back to other NPS.
Right. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
just a quick time check. We have 10 more minutes or 12 more minutes before. Okay.
Okay, so let's look at it. 15.5, authorize staff to renew agreement with Illuminate Education for $171,000. And
Correct. So this is a program that we have used for years. The prior cost was $205,248.
mhm,
And this is a program that we would like to continue for Illuminate Education and software licenses. It includes both content, learning management system, our elementary report cards, and our Illuminate parent portal for the review of report cards and state assessment results.
Okay.
Right.
Any idea why this thing is like 15% less? Is that related to enrollment?
Likely it is. I don't know that I haven't really heard of anything on a price reduction from Illuminate. It may just be related to the fact that we have a smaller enrollment projected for the next year than we have in previous years.
But that's like 15% is a large number. We are not losing that many students, but anyway, we'll take it, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh, but this one is the budget is LCAP. So this one is we are using the LCAP for all students?
This is something that all students do benefit from, but the content and the resources here and the learning management system is beneficial for our unduplicated students as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps us with the data analysis of how to best serve our unduplicated students due to the assessment results and analysis portion of that.
Okay. Data. Okay, thank you. Let's see what else. 11.6, which is
15.6.
Yeah. Is this what is the dollar amount? Is there something resolution declaring?
15.6 is a resolution that allows us to be part of a fast open contract utilization service, which is why they call it FOCUS.
Mm-hmm.
And that allows us to, instead of putting out an RFP when we might need to purchase something specific to technology, we can utilize the participation in this program, which already has procurement of products that we can purchase for our network equipment and installation.
Mm-hmm.
It helps give us a competitive price and meets the requirements that we have to meet in order to make those purchases.
And the next item is a specific expenditure related to buying something from that, through that program.
Right. Okay. So the next one is 15.7, authorized staff to enter into a purchase agreement with NMS.net for middle school conversion technology purchase for $1.163 million.
Correct. So this is contingent upon the prior item.
Mm-hmm.
With the prior item being approved, then we can utilize this to purchase through AMS.net. It includes network switches and other required supplies and materials for our phones, speakers, and wireless access points.
Mm-hmm.
We'll need those for the conversion of Centerville, Hopkins, and Thornton.
Mm-hmm.
We will also be purchasing temporary switches to be installed in the summer. And that is due to supply chain issues. Those temporary switches would then be used to replace other ones that fail in future times. And that's the cost of $1.16 million.
Right. That covers the 3 schools, which is currently in renovation.
Correct.
So now let's look at 15.8, authorized staff to enter into a joint use agreement for student transportation services for $1.5 million. And the source is general fund.
Yes, so this is a contract to support our current transportation department.
Mm-hmm.
And that is to address the fact that we are short on drivers and we need to increase our obligation. We need to meet our obligation to provide home to school transportation for our special education students that are eligible for such transportation based on their IEPs. And this contract should be replacing a prior contract that we believe this is a more viable and affordable program based on the design of what we are seeking and needing for services.
So can you look at the chart, which is A, B, C, D, and then they have E, F, G, H, I, etc. So I thought they are all the same. Sorry, actually, no. if you look at Santa Barbara Transportation Corp, and then there is a lot ABCD, and then there's a lot EFGH something. But I think the service is the same. Like they talk about 20 passenger driver and the E. Okay, A is 20 passenger driver, and the E is also bus 20. What's the difference? One is 4 hours is 500 something. The other no $543, and the other one is 500. You see what I mean? Okay, on the last two. Santa Barbara Transportation, the last two comparison
You have
chart.
to look at the specific RFP. There must be a difference in the RFP versus specific type of services in those. But we can get back, but those are different specifications in RFP.
Okay. So does this transportation include gasoline? Because the next item is we're having talk about gasoline price. So is this one when we contract with them for $1.5 million, do we need to pay for the gas?
Yes, they would. Yeah, they fuel their own buses.
Okay, so it's all included.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, and I'm just thinking that with the drivers shortage and gasoline price increase, is there something we can talk to the community to see whether we can do a little bit of carpooling, or we can pick up more students? Because I see some a big bus would only carry one student. So can we do something a little bit better? And while serving the students, we can also cut the cost.
Well, our main transportation scope is our special education students who qualify for transportation services based on their IEP.
Mm-hmm.
And so we couldn't do carpooling for that and meet the obligations of our IEP requirements.
Mm-hmm.
The other main scope of transportation is field trips that are taken during the day.
Mm-hmm.
And so we couldn't necessarily carpool there. We would
Mhm.
always encourage our community to carpool it the best they can to the extent feasible, to help merely with traffic drop off and obviously air pollution as well.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't necessarily ask our special education population to carpool. We could make a general request, but it would not relieve us of our obligation to transport each individual student that qualifies for such transportation.
Well, absolutely. I think that it's if it's our requirement for the school, to do so. But yeah, But I think if we give the idea to the community, and let's see whether they can, come to some kind of cooperation to help reduce the cost. With the gas and the transportation shortage, the drivers, is there something we can do?
Well, I suppose as of today, the budget that we are allocating is lower than what we had last year, right? Or let's say pre-COVID, when transportation was fully being utilized. Is that correct?
I'd have to have our staff go back and pull that data, but we do believe that this contract for services is a better agreement for service for the district than the one that we were utilizing previously.
Okay. Okay. So can you get us the number of last year's expense on this category, so we can know that how much
Yes.
is increased or decreased?
I'll ask our finance staff to gather the amount that we've spent based on the estimated actuals for this year.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, we'll get back to you. We'll look into it.
Okay, thanks. So let's look at 15.9. Authorize staff to enter into agreement with Pinnacle Petroleum for bulk gasoline and renewable diesel fuel. And this amount is $643,000. So My question to this one is, I did not see this item last year. And is this for our general transportation, as you said, like a school bus for field trip, those kind of thing?
James or Bruce, do you have a scope on the?
Yeah, I can tell you, this would be for our fuel needs for all of our vehicles. So it would be transportation and our other vehicles as well. So it allows us to be able to purchase fuel at a bulk price for all of our district vehicles.
I
It's
see.
a normal operating cost that districts have, right? And you have, even when you don't have transportation, it's for your own vehicles as well.
So last year we just pay as we go. We don't have agreement of bulk purchase, but this year, because of the gas price, we decide to have an agreement.
I think we might have had a previous agreement. Sometimes they're multi-years. It's just a certain amount of time you have to go out and bid it out again.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's multi-years and they expire last year. So
Yeah.
Yeah, so overall, let's get some more information on this, right? So,
Yeah.
And also this is kind of, with the pricing being where it is, this may be not such a good time to get into a long-term.
But it's just by law, because we purchase so much, is we have to put out a bid to purchase.
Okay. So what about next one? 15.10 is that, that's actually waiver, which is approved, and which let's skip that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so 15.11, authorized staff to enter into agreement with one workplace to provide furniture purchase service and to ratify previous furniture purchase for Measure E. And this is, what's the dollar amount? It's $1.646 million.
Yeah, so that's the total. One part of this is the ratification of their prior purchases for Walters and Horner. The second part is approval for the upcoming purchases for Centerville, Hopkins, and Thornton. This is one workplace, which will help us with the procurement process for our furniture and has already helped us, which is why we would be utilizing the ratification process. And as Bruce had highlighted on an earlier item, the RFP was issued to 3 approved vendors in the furniture procurement pool based on a list of identified furniture needs at each site. And that's where we're getting the bulk pricing on these contracts.
Right. Okay. But the question is why, the Walters and the Horner, they are already being in place for what, 1 year, right?
Yeah.
Why we're seeing this number right now?
Well, the number you probably saw much earlier. This is just a ratification of that. In reviewing this with our legal counsel, they felt like it would be dotting our I's and crossing our T's to make sure that it was ratified by the board as we move forward.
Okay. But I have to make a comment on, Horner conversion is close to $800,000, and then other Hopkins middle school much less. What's the difference?
Well, there may be more costs for Hopkins and Centerville and Thornton as we move into the completion of the projects. Horner is obviously one of our largest middle schools. And we wouldn't necessarily be thinking that this is the total cost that we'll ever have. This is a cost at the point in time. So we likely will see more furniture costs for Centerville, Hopkins, and Thornton as we finish the conversions and get ready to move students in of August of 2023.
Got it. Okay. So 15.12, authorized staff to ratify the change orders within the agreement with the Rodent builders for district and developers, contingency expenditure directives for phase 2 of new construction and the modernization project at Centerville Middle School. So this one, the amount is $115,000 and change. So this is just change order. Is it right?
Yes, 1512 is change orders related to phase 3, $155,000 $600,000 as an estimate, and they would be paid from the contract contingency amount.
Okay. Let's move to 15.13. Authorize staff to amend the agreement with LPA Incorporation to provide design service for the modernization project at Kennedy High School. And this dollar amount is $359,000.
Yes, so this is required by DSA for additional scope of the project. We talked about some of this in our last board meeting, and this is an amendment for the additional scope of $359,779 pending board approval, and this is to allow the architects to do the design work, I believe, to complete this project or the additional scope of the project.
Okay. I think this one have some questions. I'll send to you. I'll send you later in Q&A. Now let's look at 15.14. Authorize staff to amend the agreement with 6 Dimension LLC for construction management service for the new construction and modernization project at Thornton Middle School for $742,000. And what is that?
So this is due to the overall delays in the Thornton project. We need to extend the contract of the construction management firm that is doing the work, and that's sixth Dimension that's providing the construction management services for Thornton.
Right. So, so anyone can give me a idea of a management company would cost $3.5 million. So what is the bulk, the percentage? Kind of you say, okay, 20%, let's see, or 15% based on the project budget.
The project budget is $92.4 million right now.
Okay. So the percentage is about right. We have done so many projects, so they are kind of falling into different, kind of falling into an average percentage, right? So 3.5 is about right. Just my general question. So usually,
I'd have to ask our facilities team to give us a better response on that, unless Bruce or James happen to know off the top of their head.
No, we have to go back and do some analysis. We can go back and do some analysis to kind of get, some bulk, some standards and percentages of both types.
Right. Okay, thank you. 15.15. Authorize staff to ratify the change order within the agreement with Lathrop Construction Associates for the new construction and modernization project at Hopkins Middle School for $487,000, which is supported by Fund 21.
So these costs will be paid from the contingency contract. These are to authorize the ratification of the change orders within the agreement, and they're just under $500,000 at present moment for this agenda item.
Okay. All right. So the other is, I think the next one would be the last one, 15.16. Authorize staff to ratify the agreement with Black. How do you pronounce the word?
Block.
Block construction for district and developers contingency expenditure directives for the new construction and modernization project at Thornton Middle School for $192,000. And this is for construction and utilized with the contingency expenditure.
Correct. So this is for Thornton for block construction. These are the change orders. And as you've noted,
Mm-hmm.
It is a proposed amount of $192,000.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what about well, there's quite a few. Let's look at 15.17. Approve amendment of the facilities lease agreement with Block construction company for completion of the improvement work to set a guaranteed maximum price for phase 3 and phase 4, which is a modernization and administration library building for the middle school project at Thornton High School. This one is $34 million, $679,000. So basically, this is a two main construction, right? Phase 3 and phase 4.
Correct.
Okay. So we can actually, this is such a huge amount. I would like to see who is managed this project and what is the management expense on this one. So we can compare with the previous one. I have question, right? The other one is a 3 million or something. And this one, let's look at this one. And just to compare. So let's look at, well, I guess that's the last one for the construction. And the last one is 15.18, the CSBA annual education conference, and which is a conference we do every year. So in San Diego, and I don't
Yes.
have question for that.
And our student trustees, we had 2 students go with us this year as well.
Okay, I think that's the last of the items on this agenda. So, Trustee Prasad, are you still here? Do you have any other questions or comment? Oh, okay.
No,
I have to start driving. Yes, he's driving.
yeah, I can talk here, but no, I don't have any other questions, so we can close.
Yep. Okay. Thank you for attending the meeting, and we'll see you on Wednesday.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.